Hello and welcome to another video in Abolition. I'm your host, Daryl Valerie. First, let's recap on what we discussed in our last video. Yahweh is the expression of God that's at the top of the food chain, atop the pyramid of all the other expressions for the Jewish version of God. The expression of El, although being a designation for God, is different than the name Yahweh. I would suggest that El is in a category that should be viewed with care and scrutiny and consideration, because the very ideas, the very aspects that approach Yahweh but are not Yahweh are Luciferian. So the tradition of El has carried over into the English language through our words and through the meaning associated with them. Remember that El came to the Jewish people from the Canaan culture, the Canaanite culture, and was the paternal father of the gods who wielded a lightning bolt. So in English, we have words like electricity and electrical. We have words like election, like electorate. We have words like elite. And all of those words share the EL phonetic, but also connect way back in time, thousands and thousands of years, to this concept of L. The reason I mention this as important is because we see in the stories of the Bible that uh, the El forces, the Elohim forces, one might say, the gods of this world, are always seeking to overthrow the God of the abstract, the God in heaven, the God of law, of truth, of order. And we see that in the Ten Commandments story, and it's reflected in how the devil sort of tricks the Jewish people into creating the golden bowl and sacrificing their children and people to it. So even while God is delivering the law, delivering the Torah, delivering his own commands from his very mouth, you see that there's a competition between the forces. And that is the time I suggest that people should be most cautious when they think they're winning. And I think that we have a parallel to that in American history when we look at the 13th Amendment, which was an amendment brought to the United States by the Republican Party, which was at the time especially the Abolitionist Party. And the country had just fought a bitter and bloody civil war to resolve the issue. And what do we get? We get the abolition of slavery with the exception of criminals who have been indicted. So Black America has gotten screwed by this, and so is everyone in America, right? We decided that slavery should be abolished, and our elite, who we selected to make an exception. I don't think it's right, and I think that that is a specific point in time when our political leadership, secular leadership, utterly failed. And the American people now live in the result with huge portions of our population so jaded by our society that like they want to, many people, many Black Americans want to go to war with the police. Certainly not all, right? But so many people view criminal justice as a real fight. And whether it is or whether it is not, I'm not even going to comment on. Now, I don't think it's all in the minds of people who have been repeating the same message of institutional oppression for, decades and decades. I don't think it's make believe. Uh, And it seems like if we're ever going to move forward as a society, we have to find a way to start addressing it. And that will take nuance, that will take consideration, that will take discernment. And that's a major part of what underlays the teachings I'm trying to convey here. Because even as these concepts of Luciferianism and Jesus and Satan and God, as those moved through time and shifted from culture to culture to culture, we see a constant revamping and reframing of what these ideas mean. So let's look at this specifically. I've mentioned several times that the Hebrew term El comes from the Canaanite father of the gods, also named El. But what's really interesting is El to the Canaanites was directly tied to and associated with planetary worship of the planet Saturn. Okay, in the Star of David, the star that we sort of the modern thinker ties to Israel, the Star of David, six-sided star, to the Canaanites was the star of Saturn. And the reason I think it bears mentioning here is because as you see this idea of God sort of mingle in the storytelling of the Jewish people transitioning from the Canaanite culture to the Jewish culture, the planetary aspect of El was dropped from the conception of the Hebraic term, and that's why Jewish people don't worship the planet Saturn, right? Now, interestingly, to in the kind of Christian conception of things, I think it is completely fair and accurate to say that the types of ideas that were shaved away from El, uh, being planetary worship, being some of the things associated with the practices of that planetary worship, are what Christian people consider Satan. Okay, and honestly, this, especially in ancient times, is was the basis for a lot of anti-Semitism. This incorrect idea that Jewish people worshipped Saturn, uh, and so the ancient thinker would look to Jewish people that were in the banking industry or in the legal profession or as judges, and would sort of tie them to Saturn, to Satan. Now, again, that is a misinterpretation of Judaism. In my view, Judaism and Christianity are fundamentally linked, and both religions involve both. I prefer to think of them as philosophies, to be honest. Both of these philosophies incorporate this action of taking an idea, elevating parts of it, shedding away some of the idea, discarding it, and bearing the rest of it with a lot of scrutiny. Uh, so as we continue in these videos, we're going to take a look at Saturn worship and Saturn storytelling as it occurred to other groups within the ancient world. Because then we'll be able to get a real picture, a real character, a real flavor of that which was discarded when El made the transition from Canaan to Judaism. Um, so my story of Saturn, for the purposes of this series, will begin in Egypt. Now, interestingly, similar to in the Greek stories how there would be waves of gods that would overthrow older forces. Uh, Saturn is sort of in a later age of gods, and is associated in many ways with the fall of the sun god Ra, and so Saturn, many people aren't aware of how astrological ages work. And astrological age is simply the vernal equinox and the spring equinox. If you look at the path that the sun takes uh, during the day, if you chart that path on a backdrop of the night sky and look behind it, that line will be drawn across a constellation, and each constellation is a house of the zodiac, and so each age, the age really just represents the time period in which that sun's path takes to move through the constellation. So that age of Saturn was the dawning of the age of civilization. Saturn, or in the Egyptian traditions, Horus, was the god of kingship and disguise. So, kind of like a father of gods type figure, the god of kingships. And in the ancient world, the skies were representative of the infinite, right? The skies were the heavens, and man is confined to the finite. We live, we die, we see the beginning and end of things, and we see all that on earth, which is finite. But the skies, the heavens, stretch on forever and are vast beyond imagination. Now, I'm not saying that to suggest the sky is infinite. I'm just trying to provide a context for how it was viewed at the time. So Horus, the god of Saturn, was the god of kingship and the skies. Interestingly, his origin story involves Ra, who was the main god in the previous age, the sun god, and involves Isis, the goddess of the moon and of magic and of fertility. So in this story, the sun, Ra, was making his trips through the houses, through the constellations, right? Time was passing at this astrological clock. And Isis tricked Ra, and Ra was bitten by a poisonous snake. Excuse me, a venomous snake. And so he was under the threat of death. And Isis said that she could heal him with her magic, but she would require his real name, which had a kind of mystical power, as the true names do in lots of different fantasy genres, fantasy stories. And so Ra giving his real name to Isis would give Isis a real power over not only Ra but over reality. But Ra, wanting to live, gave her his name. So Isis went along, and it's a twisted story. She finds the dismembered parts of her beloved and belated husband, Osiris, the god of the underworld, the god of the dead, and the god of agriculture in the ancient Egyptian kind of sphere. At least those things are all kind of tied together. She finds his dismembered parts, resurrects him, and sleeps with him. And she bears him a son, whom she imparts to the real name of Ra. And the real name of Ra is Horus. So you get all these stories of Saturn being the false sun, the false sun, and in my view, part of it is tied to the storytelling. So now Horus takes on the mantle of the sun god. He's the god of the skies. He's also the god of kingship. But he also has all these flavors that he inherits from his mother Isis and from his real father Osiris. And so to me, this Horus character in ancient Egypt is just absolutely fascinating. And, the stories, even of Horus, are so powerful that they get woven into Christianity thousands and thousands of years later. And you really see that through the tale of the three wise men who would point to the star that led to hope for the world, which the three wise men followed the star to the birth of Jesus. So in Egypt, the three wise men were actually the stars on the belt of Orion, and they pointed to when Sirius, a star that was tied to Osiris, would appear in the sky at the summer solstice. And the reason that that's important is because in Egypt that would signal the flooding of the Nile, which was tied to the agriculture and food production of ancient Egypt. Okay, now it gets really interesting when you start looking into some of these details. So, the ancient Egyptian people had a practice where they would uh, basically have a type of Eucharist ceremony in which they would take little wheat cakes and eat the body of what they considered to be Osiris. Uh, the impact of agriculture on civilization is also really important when you look at the issue of slavery in Egypt. It's no secret that the slaves were fed a diet of yeast water, so beer, right, which comes from agriculture at the end of the day. Uh, and those associations were not lost on people. And what we'll see uh, as a viewing community as we go through some of these stories, we're going to watch Saturn in Egypt as the figure of Horus, but then we'll also chart his journeys through ancient Greece as Kronos and as I would suggest Dionysus and later Bacchus in Rome, because you see all of these same story elements from different cultures. And I would suggest if you look at these story elements and uh, put them together, you'll end up with a very comprehensive idea of what Satan means in modern Christian theology, right? Because it's these discarded bits of Saturn worship that sort of didn't make the cut of being El, and El didn't quite make the cut of being Yahweh. And it's important because these, although many take them as lessons in indoctrination, really they're lessons in discernment and how to take complex ideas, some good and some bad, and balance them and weigh them and decipher them. And it's really important that we do so, in my opinion, for oh so many reasons. America is a terribly troubled place, and what we need now more than ever is discernment, right? The ability to listen to one another and to hear one another and the bravery and courage it takes to speak on these issues. Um, so we've talked about a little bit about Horus. We've talked a little bit about Saturn in ancient Egypt, and it might be kind of hard to see how I think something like agriculture could be tied to satanic practices. Um, and although I will refer back to the remark I made about the Egyptian slaves being held in bondage in many ways through alcohol, right? Through a sort of misguided um, utilization of agriculture. Now, I'm not saying that, having a beer is, some satanic, crazy thing, but, subjugating a large group of people and enslaving them and making them constantly drunk. That's uh, that's not only borderline, but that crosses right over the line. And again, I mean, this isn't stuff. These are archetypal truths, that are even deeper than stereotypes. I would suggest these things are in many ways transcendent and stand outside of time. And if that's true, we should be able to find examples of how agriculture can go awry now. And I would point you back to the city we discussed in the last video, Allensworth, California, the first all-black city in the state of California that was doing well and prospering until its contracts. I believe it was with a like land management company. I don't remember that detail, but I do know that the contract was not enforced, and the water that they required and had contracted to receive was not delivered. So we might be tempted to think that these ideas from ancient Egypt don't matter, right? Or that it's irrelevant that agriculture can be weaponized. Uh, but the things that were true yesterday are true today, and in the same way that agriculture was a weapon in ancient Egypt, it was a weapon in ancient Greece, and we'll discuss that in the next video as we look at Dionysus. And it was weaponized against Black America now. And, a major part of my work in abolition, although it's not specifically serving Black America, I have both of my eyes on Black America, right? As a part of my Christianity, I think we're supposed to sit at the table of people that aren't like us. And I'm some white guy hanging out in my living room, making videos, trying to get a message out of have a specific plan and the specific actions we can take to begin to heal this country. And, the things I say, the things I write about on Facebook, although I get the sense that they're really, really wild, uh, most of what I say I've learned from Black America. I'm not making it up when I say that the government has weaponized itself against the black father. I'm not making it up when I say that the government has destroyed the black family. We want to act like selling drugs and black market stuff and crime isn't tied into that history, right? When the woman of the family has to make a choice between getting a government check or having a man in the house, what do you think the best of men are going to do? They're going to disappear from the house and they're going to find a way to make money that the government doesn't track so that they can do whatever they can to support their families, even if that means taking a hit. And I think that this whole situation for Black America is profoundly sad and tragic and evil. It's like Black America, my brothers and sisters are free but not liberated. And that has to change. Freedom under the law is great, but liberation comes from being free from government intrusion. And Black America has never been free from the government. Not in the days of slavery, not in the days of segregation, not when the KKK was running around burning down black homes and businesses and lynching people, not when black men were being persecuted for made up sex crimes against white women, not when man in the house welfare policies were instituted, not when the drug war occurred, not during Three Strikes You're Out, not today, and unless we change course, not tomorrow. And that's what this work is about: finding a way to change course myself and to help other people change course as well. It's not easy, but nothing worthwhile is ever easy. And that's why I'm so thankful for everyone that listens to what I have to say, everyone that has subscribed, everyone that likes my little YouTube, and everyone that shares what I have to say on Facebook. I'm deeply appreciative of your support. So down the pipeline, we're going to look at the traditions of Saturn in Greece. We're going to follow the tradition not only of Kronos, the Titan who rules the planet Saturn from the North Pole, just in time for Christmas, but we're going to follow how those traditions shift into the Greek god Dionysus. And we're going to look at Dionysus and Satanism. So stay tuned. Thank you so much for your love and your support. I can't tell you how much it means to me. God bless and have a wonderful day.